If a person never gets married, or married and divorced, never gets married and divorced are two completely different animals. Why? Because someone that never gets married, assuming that they tried to get married, they weren't like one of these people that just became depressed and decided they're not going to get married, or they wasted their time dating people and pretending to be married, like some people do in the secular world, where they live together for 15 years without getting married. You know, that's a mistake. That's a person that's going to get punished severely for such a thing. But if they literally they looked for a shidduch, I have a cousin. He's an enormous Talmid Chacham, something out of this world. He only learns Torah, doesn't work. He only learns Torah from morning to night. He's a rabbi. He gives shurim in Hebrew. You're never going to see him on the internet. You're never going to see him holding a phone even. But he is already almost 50 years old, 48, 49 years old, and he's still single, never been married. He wants to get married, but he cannot find a girl that's willing to marry someone that's not willing to work, only wants to learn Torah. Can't find. Everybody wants him to work. Everybody wants him to work at least part-time. He's not willing to part with the Torah. He says he's only going to learn Torah. If she wants him to work, can't. And until this day, he hasn't had to marry to find a kala. And of course, this kala has to be very special. It has to be somebody that is willing to marry someone that's a full-time avrech with no intention whatsoever of ever working. Even if it's like, oh, why don't you become a rabbi that makes a living? No, not even that. He wants to learn Torah day and night. That's what he wants in his life. He's a handsome guy. He's an enormous chacham. To find a special woman, HaShem hasn't sent it yet. Does that mean he's never going to get married? Hopefully he does get married. It's I even tried myself to see maybe I know somebody, but he only speaks Hebrew, doesn't speak a word of English. So I don't really know that many people that speak only Hebrew and that are in that caliber where they're willing to marry an avrech. And also, he doesn't necessarily want a woman that's married with that's divorced with 3 kids. He doesn't want that. He wants a woman that's also never got married. And he wants to have kids. So he doesn't want to marry someone that's can't have kids. So again, he knows what he wants, and he hasn't found it yet. HaShem hasn't sent it yet. Does that mean that he'll get punished for it? No, he's trying. He tried. He went on shidduchim. It hasn't succeeded. He's not going to get punished for it. There are some people in the world, chas v'shalom on him, on anybody in Am Yisrael, but there are certain people in the world that their tikkun of marriage was already completed in the previous incarnation, and it's decreed from heaven for them not to get married during this life. So they try, and it simply won't happen. There are some people like that. But again, you still have to try. No one is absolved from trying. Everybody has to try to get married. Everybody has to try to find someone. I know several people that told me when they were younger, when they were in their 30s, they thought they had more time. When they were in their 40s, they didn't really feel like getting married anymore. They liked their freedom. Now that they're in their late 50s, and in one case in her 60s, says she can't wait to die. Why? She feels lonely. And she knows she made a mistake. She didn't have kids, and she didn't get married, and she thought she's going to be free like a 30-year-old for the rest of her life. And, in essence, she realized she made a mistake of her life. So don't be a fool. It doesn't matter how old you are. You're 20, you're 30, you're 50, you're 60. Don't give up. Try to get married. Try to get married. I have one of the Mekubalim, one of the biggest Mekubalim that in a previous name escapes me, Shem Shmo. Rav Kaduri, Alav Shalom. Rav Kaduri, after his first wife passed away, he married a woman that was, I think, something like 40 years younger than him. Tzadikah, something out of this world. He got married at 80-something years old. Maybe even 90 years old. He got married. And she would fit him. She would drop me, Kvod Harav, lunch. What was his lunch? Rav Kaduri only ate bamba. Anybody knows bamba is? That's all he ate. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Your lunch is ready. What's lunch? Bamba. That's all he ate. But she would give him. Anyway, she was a big tzadikah. Big tzadikah. She wanted to be married to one of the biggest rabbis in the world, even though he was literally double her age or more. And she is a very praiseworthy woman, and she did it for all the right reasons. There's not many women in the world like that. But the point being is that we see that even Gdolei Ador, even the biggest rabbis in the world, got married multiple times after their first wives passed away before them. In some cases, some rabbis got married multiple times. Rabbi Akiva got married multiple times. The Gaon Mivilna, I believe, got married a couple of times. Several big rabbanim got married a few times. So the point is that everybody has to try to get married, to have a spouse, and it's not just for the intimate reasons. There are other reasons to have a partner than just intimacy. Surely intimacy is a very big deal and it's very important, but nonetheless it's not the only reason to be married. So a person should always try to get married, never give up, never have the attitude that, maybe I'm not destined to get married because Rabbi said it in a shiur, so I already fixed my tikkun. No, don't take what I said that way. There are some people, if they died without getting married and they tried, then you can conclude they already completed their tikkun of marriage in the previous incarnation. But so long as someone's alive, they have to try to get married. And it's very, very important for them to get married. And to answer your question more directly, if somebody was destined to not get married in this incarnation, in this life, because he already fixed it or she already fixed it in the previous incarnation, what happens when they get resurrected? They get resurrected with the person that they completed that tikkun with in the previous life. They get resurrected. And usually it's very, the Chachamim say, I believe I saw it by Rabbi Yudaftaya and also the Arizal, it says that usually the person's, and I think they're quoting the Zohar, that usually the person remarries the same spouse in every reincarnation. Usually when he has to do a tikkun, usually the wife has to do a tikkun. And when she has to do a tikkun, he has to do a tikkun. Usually their tikkunim are connected to each other somewhere or another. And they end up remarrying each other over and over again. So it's that's another thing that a lot of people don't know. Not necessarily a rule of thumb. She doesn't have to come back. If she was a tzadikah and he was a rasha, she doesn't have to come back, but it's very uncommon for her to be a tzadikah and him be a rasha. Very, very uncommon. It's not very rare. It's more likely that they're both rashaim or they're both tzadikim. As it says, Isha bona, Isha oreset, a woman builds, a woman destroys. So the righteousness of the husband has a lot to do with the wife, and vice versa. Let's say you don't have enough time to complete the whole Shacharit service while being at home before work. You do the required Shema and Amidah. Are you penalized for not completing, or you just lose the merit? If for some reason you never get married or marry and divorce, wrong person, will you be reunited with a soulmate in the next life? Or so you're asking double header. Okay. So first question is, when you're praying, when you do part of the prayer instead of the full prayer, if you fulfilled the main parts such that are Shema Yisrael and Amidah, then you have fulfilled your obligation of prayer. And not praying the rest of it, you lost the merit. You lost the extra stuff. That does not mean that you should continue just praying that. You should pray more than that. But the point is that, it's not a sin like you missed the whole prayer or something like that. Kvodav, we learned that HaShem maintains the world because of Torah study. Otherwise, the world would cease. Is this only study of Gemara or any study like Midrash, Chumash, Tanakh? Baruch Hashem, fantastic question. Fantastic question. So the pasuk goes, "Ve'im lo briti yomam v'layla chukot shamayim va'aretz lo samti." The Kadosh Baruch Hu says to the prophet Jeremiah that if it's not from my covenant, my Torah, being learned day and night, the rules of the world will cease to exist, whether it be gravity or it be the way that the chemicals and atoms and so on connect to each other, or simply our ability to breathe. The world will simply cease to exist. Now, so he says, Briti. What's Briti? Briti is my covenant. What's my covenant? Torah. What's Torah? Torah is everything that's related to Torah. The oral Torah or the written Torah. Either reading in the Chumash, or learning a Gemara, or learning Musar, or learning a shiur Torah, or giving a shiur Torah, or learning some halachot, or learning some Zohar, and so on. Any part of the Torah, anything. Even you learning, and actually, even I would say not even. It's a high level of learning. With what? You learn with your kids. You learn with a little kid. You got a little 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. Tell him, long time ago, there was a tzaddik named Avraham. What's tzaddik, Abba? What's tzaddik? Tzaddik is someone that's really righteous, does everything Hashem says. Oh, what's Hashem? What's Hashem, Abba? Hashem, He's the one that created the whole world. Everything that you see, Hashem made it. So who made the sun? Hashem. Who made the sky? Hashem. Who made you? Hashem. Who made everything? Hashem. That is Torah. That is Torah. And guess what? That little kid is going to say, okay, well, he doesn't know how to read yet, but he's starting to learn letters. Aleph Bet. Chachamim say, when a boy, a girl learn Aleph Bet, that's Torah. When a boy or girl learn Aleph Bet, that's Torah. That's Torah. So if it's not for that Aleph Bet, the world could simply disintegrate. So all Torah, Musar, Halacha, Shiurei Torah, Gemara, everything is maintaining the world, Baruch Hashem. And that's also part of the reason, I think we answered this question last week, part of the reason of why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world in such a fashion that there is a North Pole, South Pole, and there's different people with different hours, meaning that here I'm in America, it's 7 hours behind Israel. And it's 17-hour difference, I believe, to Australia. And so on and so forth. There's different times. Why would Hashem make the world different hours where it's day here but night there, and so on and so forth? In order to make sure that His world continues. Because sometimes somebody's going to be able to learn at night but not during the day. So what happens? Hashem makes sure that there's somebody else in the world that when it's day for that guy that he can't learn, there's somebody else in the world that's learning. Somebody else in the world that's learning during that time. So that way, there's someone always learning 24 hours a day in the world, because over there it's day, over there it's night, over there it's busy, over there it's less busy, and so on and so forth. Reuven says, Shar Gegulim says that gay people come back as rabbits. Yeah, you're right. Chazaku Baruch, Reuven. Chazaku Baruch. Because it's a midah keneged midah, the rabbits are promiscuous animals, as everyone knows, and obviously the homosexuals, whether male or female homosexuals, are by far the most promiscuous beasts that exist in the world, even more than animals. The only thing that's on their mind is intimacy and like pure animals, which actually, by the way, is also the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu brought the plague of the wild beasts that came to attack the Egyptians, because the Egyptians like to not only be homosexual, but they like to be homosexual in with many people. And Hashem says, just like you acted like animals, I'm going to bring animals. But just like you acted like animals with many, I'm going to bring many different type of animals. Because you act like different type of animals. And this is in the Midrash Rabbah, section 15, Perek 15, section 27. So yeah, being homosexual is definitely a disaster, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes very, very harshly. One of the punishments is for a person has to be reincarnated as a rabbit. Now don't think that it's a fluffy, cute rabbit that has a good time continuing being promiscuous. That rabbit is suffering every single second that it exists, because it knows that it has a neshama in it. Are Noahide women obligated to keep the laws of modesty? Technically, there's more leniencies for Noahides, but it's highly recommended for Noahides to keep modesty, because when a woman is immodest, it leads to a lot of sins that are sins for Noahides, that are, in essence, permanent death penalty. So in essence, it's highly, highly recommended, at least highly recommended for a woman to be modest, but in most opinions would tell you that it's also obligated, because if a woman is not modest, she could lead other men to be promiscuous with themselves or with her or with other people, and that will go on her bill, and in essence that will destroy her neshama. So in so many words, yes. obligated to be modest, Noahide or not. How do you know your previous life? When praying vidui, we ask to not bring up past transgressions and ask for full forgiveness or sin, transgressions. Why would we still pay for our past sins and present sins? Because some sins, a person did not pay for them yet. Sometimes a person has to be reincarnated in order to pay for his sins. Like we learned from the Chachamim, many times there are certain people that were born with certain deformities, if you will, in order to pay for a previous sin. A person is, let's say, born without a mute. He's not able to speak. Perhaps it could be, according to the Arizal, that a person said a lot of Lashon Hara in a previous life. So in order for him to fix himself, he has to live a whole life without speaking a single word. So there are certain things. But we also learned from this week's parasha that we're introduced to the 12 tribes. They were righteous, they were tzaddikim, they were amazing. But we also see in the Gemara that the leading opinion is that the 12 tribes, the 10 of them had to, or 9 of them, 10 of them had to be reincarnated as the 10 martyrs that were the biggest tzaddikim, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Hanina, and many of the tzaddikim that were murdered in cold blood and in vicious ways at the time of the Gemara, where the goyim would literally peel their bodies, sell their meat in the market, and so on and so forth. The worst possible death that could ever be in this world, they got. And the Chachamim say that these martyrs, these 10 martyrs, were the 12 tribes, were the Yehuda and Naphtali and so on and so forth. Why would the tzaddikim, our avot, our 12 tribes, have to be reincarnated? They were complete tzaddikim. Why do they have to be reincarnated? Because we find out that at the end of that story that Yosef died 10 years before his brothers. He died at age 110, unlike his brothers that died at 120. And Chachamim say that that's because he got punished for not forgiving his brothers. He got punished for not forgiving his brothers, so he got punished for it. How did they get punished for him not forgiving them? They had to be reincarnated because he never completely forgave them. On Kilosagel says that they had to be reincarnated. They had to be reincarnated as the Asaratu al Gemalchut, the 10 martyrs. So that means that although they were extremely righteous and they did tshuva and they said, I'm sorry, part of that tshuva required a reincarnation. But surely they didn't have the same tests in the next life as they did in the first life. But point being is that sometimes reincarnation is a necessity. How can Hanukkah and Bitachon be relevant to today's attack against Jews and Judaism? Listen, the whole story of Hanukkah that we discussed earlier today is that you have a constant attack against Judaism, not just physically but spiritually. And unfortunately, in the last generation, it's going to look like the wicked people are winning. So the only way that a person can survive and stay a tzaddikah, and not become a Hellenist is by having bitachon in the 13 principles of faith, which is that HaShem rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked. So it's very important for a person to have bitachon in the promises of the Torah. If a person does not have bitachon, does not have confidence in HaShem's promises, he could easily become a Hellenist. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of times, that people, start doing certain mitzvot because they expect good things right away. They don't get it, and they say, listen, if Hashem doesn't do this for me, I'm going to stop being religious. And that's not the right way to do things. It's a very stupid thing to do, unfortunately. But unfortunately, many people think that Hashem works for them, and that's a mistake. So having bitachon is critical, because if you have bitachon, if you have confidence in Hashem, you know that in the end you will be rewarded. Even if it looks like you're losing, in the end you'll be rewarded. And in the interim, it may look like you're losing, but in the end you'll be rewarded. The guy that like I mentioned an example yesterday that I learned a lot of musar from, of how when you see bodybuilders that were like walking tanks during their peak of their life, it looked like they're always going to be winning, they're always going to look good, they're always going to look healthy and so on. But if you see them several years after their career is over, many of them die, many of them look very sickly, many of them do get sick, become paralyzed and start losing their mind, become depressed and so on. So the Yetzer Hara works that way, where he makes the wicked people look like the bodybuilder is looking in the competition. He makes them look like that. But what HaShem is trying to teach us is that, remember, that bodybuilder, that athlete, that celebrity, that Hollywood person, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. Why? Because if they are wicked, they're going to get punished. They're going to get punished in this world and the next. It just looks like they're winning. It's an illusion. But it looks like they're winning now. You may look like you're not winning because you're just sitting there, putting the shoe together in your little, blue-collar job and learning some chumash and doing some mitzvot. It looks like you are not winning. Don't worry, Hashem says, you'll win. You'll win in a big way. One of the things that I can tell you is a fantastic example is that an average person today thinks that they need to make a lot more money than they need in order to survive. So many times people don't have kids or as many kids as they could have because they think they don't have enough money. Now, Rabbi Yashiv, alav shalom, he never, went to work at some, at stores and malls and businesses and so on. He was dedicated his life to the Torah. He was a dayan also, but the point is, he didn't focus his life on business. Now, if you knew about his life and you say, listen, this guy, he shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 kids because he wouldn't be able to afford them. By the time he passed away, by the time he left this world, over 100 years old, he had over 1,000 grandkids. 1,000 grandkids. Great-grandkids, 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 great-grandkids. He was actually invited to the Brit Milah of his grandson's grandson. Of his grandson's grandson. He was invited to the Brit Milah. It was Brit Milah. Just imagine. Now, you would think, 1,000 people, you need to be a billionaire to afford such a thing. No. You need to just believe in Hashem. Believe in Hashem. You have the kids when you need to have kids. You have the house when you need to have. Whatever you need, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to provide you. And that's it. You trust Hashem 100%. Hashem provides. Hashem provides. You can say, no, but he didn't pay for all of them. What do you mean he didn't pay for all of them? You think that Torah that he learned didn't finance everything? Didn't give life to all of his children, all of his daughters and sons? And you don't think he did? Of course he did. So that's the thing. When a person has bitachon in Hashem's promise of reward to the righteous and punishment for the wicked, they're going to succeed in life. When they don't have bitachon, they're already partly, if not completely, Hellenized. On Rosh Hashanah, Hashem judges us for parnasah, as we learned from you, well, from me, I guess. But how does he determine the person's income relative to the local average income? Because $20,000 a year in Cambodia, but not in Miami, or does he base it on purchasing power or a fixed standard like gold? Or HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Potech et yadav masbiah lekol chai ratzon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens his hands with no limitations, and he feeds every single one of his creations. He gives the ant as much food as it needs. He gives the lion as much food as it needs. He gives the human being much food it needs, and needless to say, he gives the Jew as much food as he needs. Now, sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a person even more than he needs for different reasons. Sometimes it's because he sees that this person is a good partner. So the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah and also Masechet Beitzah says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides what a person is going to get on Rosh Hashanah until Rosh Hashanah, meaning the year in advance is already decided how much a person is going to get. But what's not included in that decision is the money that he's going to get for the use of mitzvot. Why? That's determined by the person himself, because Hashem pays for that full price for that. Meaning, Hashem could decide for a person to make, let's say, $100,000 for the year, regardless of whether he lives in Cambodia or he lives somewhere else. Obviously, it's an amount that is substantial regardless of where you live. Obviously, it's more in one place than the other, but let's just call it he gives him enough money to be middle size income type of place, types of living. Okay, so he's not filthy rich, he's not poor, he's somewhere in the middle. So let's just call that $100,000. Now, Hashem decides to give him that $100,000, but that $100,000 does not include mitzvot money. Meaning, whatever money that person, he or she, decides to spend on Hashem's mitzvot, Hashem says, that money I'm going to pay you back. And sometimes multiple fold. It's not considered part of that income. So, you made $100,000, you gave $10,000 in maaser, in a tithe, or you gave a chomesh of 20%, so you gave $20,000, Hashem says, okay, you trusted me by giving maaser. Every time you got a check, you gave 10%. Every time you got a check, you gave 20%, right? For the sake of Torah, for the sake of Kiyuv. So you gave that 10%. What the reward is, twofold. Number one, it's a reward that I said if you give maaser, you get protection. If you give chomesh, the Gaon Vilna says you'll become rich in your life. So that's one reward, but that reward doesn't have a time, doesn't have a clock. It could be next year, it could be 5 years from now, it could be whenever it is. But in your lifetime, you'll become rich or your money will be protected, right? That's for the maaser, that's one reward. Another reward that Hashem gives a person is that during that year, he says, I'm going to pay you full price for that. Meaning, you made $100,000, Hashem gave you $100,000, you gave $10,000, Hashem gives you back the $10,000. How does he give you that money back? In many, many different ways. In many different ways. Sometimes he gives it to you from a place you never thought you're gonna have to get it. Sometimes he takes away a certain expense from you, so in essence you end up keeping more of your money than you would have kept otherwise. The point being is, whatever you have left, whatever you have in essence, whatever you enjoyed, whatever you have left as your net income, is the money that Hashem gave you that is in essence includes that mitzvot money. Because if, let's say, you made $100,000 and you're used to, let's say, having a $50,000 in expenses. So in essence, at the end of the year, you're supposed to have $50,000 left. I'm not considering taxes at this point. So if, let's say, you made $100,000, you have $50,000 in expenses, and that means you should have $50,000 left. Now, if you now decided, okay, you know what? Mathematically, I'm going to spend $50,000 out of my $100,000, right? That's what I spend usually. But this year I'm going to give maaser. I'm going to give 10% for Kiruv. Okay, I'm going to go to BezratHashem.org or the app. I'm going to donate $10,000, right? You do big mitzvah. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now the money that you're going to keep is going to include that $10,000. Meaning, at this point, you're supposed to technically keep less, right? Because mathematically, if you spend, you had $50,000 of expenses, you're supposed to have $50,000 left. Now, since you're giving maaser, in essence, now your expenses increase to $60,000, which means that your income should be $40,000. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it work where you actually end up keeping $50,000. How? I don't know. I do it for years already, Baruch Hashem, and somehow it all works. And in fact, the money keeps going higher. I don't know how it works. It just works. It's not something that works logically. It's not something that works mathematically. It just works. Now, this is also part of the reason why I don't spend much time looking at my bank accounts or anything like that. I usually look at my account once a month. Once a month, which is the only time I look at it, is when I have to give my maaser. Every month I give it on one day. That's the only time that I know what came in and what I need to give maaser. I don't even calculate what came out. I just look at what came in, how much do I have to give chomesh, I give 20% Baruch Hashem, and I write the check and that's it. Why? Because that's all that matters. And now, how do I know it's working? Because somehow I see that, when I went to Canada, one of the young kids that came to the lecture, he says, listen, I love your stuff and you're good, but one of these Reshaim says, yeah, this Yaron Reuven, he's only doing it for money. It said he makes a lot of money, and he says, I told him you're not even charging, so I don't know what he's talking about, but how could I defend it? So I told him, hold on, here you go. Right in front of those people there I think it was before or after the lecture, I'm not really sure. I told him, hey, hold on a second. I opened my phone, I told him, let me show you something. What are you going to show me? I'm going to show you my bank account. I'm going to show you my bank account so you can tell your friend. You can take a picture of it if you want. So I opened my account on my phone. I say, here you go. See? Here in the account, there is a $1,700. Out of the $1,700, like $1,600 or $1,700 of it came that day. Meaning, this morning, I am at zero. Like the day I came to Canada, I had zero. I had no money whatsoever in my account, but that money came up. Now, obviously, $1,700 is not a lot of money, but the point being is, tell your friend that if I was doing it for money, I think I would have a little bit more than that money. I think I would have a little bit more. Now, why am I telling you this story? Number one, that there's constant tests, meaning that at some point I had to see a zero balance. I had to see a zero balance. Now, is the balance still zero? No, it's not. Baruch Hashem, it's grown. How? It works. It works. You dedicate yourself to Hashem, you give Maaseh, you give Chomesh, you do all different types of things that Hashem says to do, and the money works. And different times, different people would send money or give money or different things. For me personally, because I don't take a salary from the organization. So it's literally, I depend on a miracle from Hashem every single month. And it works. Now, it doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean that it wasn't big tests at different times. But the reality is that you see it works. But it's not one of those things that works in a way where you could make logic of it. Where, oh yeah, I know that it's going to come in because I have this contract and I have this deal and I have that. No. When a person trusts in Hashem, he simply shows Hashem that he trusts based on how he acts. And Hashem says, you trusted me, I'm going to give you everything you need. And if you continuously show me trust, I'm going to give you even more than what you need. Why? Because I see that not only you trust me by giving, but you also give to the right places, and you're investing into the Torah by your own time, your own efforts, and even your own resources. Hashem starts giving you even more than you need. But that means that at times you're going to have tests that he has to see whether you really love him, or you're just trying to see if you can make a quick buck with Hashem by saying, oh yeah, let me give like $20,000 to the Rabbi, and maybe Hashem's going to give me $200,000 next month. It doesn't work that way. Hashem has his own timing. Hashem has his own places where he does tests. But I promise you, I've seen with my own eyes that when you actually trust in Hashem, he sends you money in 1.5 million different ways, in ways that you would have never even imagined. Never even imagined. I have one guy that I know that before the coronavirus, he was barely making a living. I don't know, maybe making 50, 60, 70,000 a year, 100,000 a year. It was okay. It was, it was fine. It wasn't like, but he lives in a very expensive place, so it's pretty much there was never any money left. So you would think, like everybody else, almost everybody lost money as a result of this coronavirus. Opposite. Hashem decided to reward this guy millions of dollars in the last year. He doesn't even know what to do with himself. Millions of dollars he was rewarded. He did a lot of good things in his life and so on, but Hashem decided to reward him in a huge way. Another guy that I know, before Corona, he told me himself, he was making between $5 and $10 million a year. Printing money, spending it obnoxiously, but he knew he was making it in over and over again. Corona happened, his business went to zero. Zero, zero. Literally. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to take from him and give to him. Even though they're not related, even though they're not in the same businesses, but in essence, the shefa that Hashem was giving one guy, he gave it to another guy. Why? One guy was investing in Torah with the little that he had. The other guy was investing into sports, into car, into all types of things. Hashem says this is a bad investment. So he switched. Simple. This happens all the time. But that means that both had their share of tests. Some they passed, some they failed. And Hashem makes things work that way. So when it comes to Hashem giving a person parnasah, surely HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the all-knowing, the one that knows what's hidden, the one that knows what's in our mind, also knows not only what we need, but also the per capita ratios and the society ratios and our liking ratios and our desire ratios and our wives ratios and our kids ratios. Surely HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows all of those things. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you based on your faith in Him. Based on your faith in Him in practice. If you use the money that He gives you for the sake of His Torah in different ways, use the money, not just to give in tzedakah. I'm not just talking about tzedakah. Let's say that's one thing. But also the money that you have. You buy kosher food, that's worth it for Hashem to give you more money. You buy your kids more books for learning Torah, that's worth it for Hashem to you use that money to buy your wife kosher clothes for modesty, it's worth it for Hashem to give you more money. But if you use the money that Hashem gave you to gamble, to eat non-kosher, to do things that are illegal and things of that nature, it's not worth it for Hashem to give you blessings. So the way you see that is not necessarily with the income, but rather with the what people actually end up enjoying out of their money. Where many times I see certain people, they make a lot of money, They make a huge income, their W-2 or their 1099, their statement of, what they show the IRS shows a big number. Like I used to have a huge number on the statement. But what they actually end up enjoying out of it is literally a fraction of a fraction. A lot of money goes to medical bills or taxes or lawsuits or all types of problems. So the way you know you have blessing in your money is not necessarily based on income, but simply based on your life. If you live a life where you're not missing anything, you have everything you need, it's already a blessed life. But I don't mean you're not missing anything where you're eating, peanut butter and jelly once a day, and that's it, that's your food for the week. No. Meaning you're eating normally, you're drinking normally, you live in a nice house normally, you have a nice car normally. Like you have the things that you would want. You're not missing for anything. That's blessing. That's shefa. That's shefa. You don't need to necessarily live in a 30-story house with 87 garages to be blessed. Shefa is simply wanting for nothing. You have a bunch more than you need perhaps even. That's shefa. That sometimes is not necessarily millions, sometimes it is, depending on the person. But if a person is using his money the right way, HaShem will give him such a life where they'll want for nothing. Whatever they want, because it tends to be good stuff, he'll give it to them. So this is the real blessing, and it's and that blessing comes in in different amounts per the place that the person is living in. If he lives in Cambodia, he'll give him a life that's Cambodian type of wanting for nothing type of living. If he lives in the United States, depending on where he lives, if he lives in LA, that means he probably has to make about $500,000 a year to live wanting for nothing. If he lives in New York, probably almost that as well, $400,000. If he lives, I don't know, in Utah, probably he needs $50,000. He's already rich. It all depends. Depends where he lives, but Hashem is going to give him a life where he doesn't need anything else, and that's a blessed life. Sometimes Hashem will give a person much more, but that's for specific acts that he makes. Like I said, the Chomesh is one of those things.